And we're just learning new information here as the wife of the Gilgo Beach murder suspect, Rex Heuermann, has officially filed for divorce. For more on this, let's go out to my colleague, Lexie Petrovic, as she spoke with another expert on this as we continue to follow this evolving case.
Latest on the Gilgo Beach murders, more information surrounding the case as well as serial killer suspect Rex Heuermann continues to come out. Many of the new details regarding his past as well as some of his retirement properties. For more on the case, we're being joined by award-winning author Robert Ottone. Robert, thanks so much for being here with us. There's been several new developments since we last spoke. What stands out to you the most in this very moment?
Well, the most recent thing within the last hour, Rex Heuermann's wife, this was announced, she has filed for divorce, and it is uncontested. These are reports from Suffolk County here on Long Island. But other than that, it's been pretty revelatory. There's been information about his sort of timeshare property in Vegas. Obviously, there's the sex work connection there. There's also South Carolina, where he and his brother own some parcels of property that supposedly has a lot of sort of junk on it, including the green Chevy Avalanche, which was seen by a witness ages ago. So that car is actually there, from what I'm understanding. They're still taking things out of his house. His lawn is still dug up. They took a doll in a glass case, a child-sized doll. That was kind of a big one. There hasn't been much since then on that. However, there is also information that they took some mirrors out of his house. And they're also looking into other properties that he may own. When I was there the day they went into his house, they were talking about how he owned a home in New Jersey. And also there was, the ties to the South Carolina properties. So that ended up, bearing fruit. But there's also a lot of police work going on across the entire country. A lot of organizations are now liaising together with the task force here in New York, which is the FBI, the Suffolk County Police, Nassau County Police, and the state troopers. So now that his DNA is in the system, it's, entirely likely that he could be linked to more things that have gone on across the country, which was kind of the theory.
Yeah, Robert, you're touching on a lot of really great points here. Let's first just start with that news that's coming down now that his wife has filed for divorce. What do we know about their marriage? Does this come as a surprise?
I don't think it comes as much of a surprise. When you learn news like that, I know his family had reacted pretty, deplorably in regards to learning about what he had been accused of. They were obviously disgusted and dismayed, but it's not a surprise. It's not a surprise. It's his second marriage, and she has children that she needs to sort of focus on and take care of. I believe their son might be special needs, so that's the priority right now. He's got to deal with his own problems, so I think it makes sense that the wife would cut ties.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about some of those other points as well, specifically the number of weapons that were found in his basement. You also mentioned the doll, bizarre discovery there. Your thoughts on what was uncovered in the basement?
Well, he's supposedly a duck hunter. So he has a lot of weapons. I think there was like 90, 92, something like that. But also at the same time, like that was something that was said years ago as well, that we should be looking at duck hunters. And nothing ever really came of it. A lot of people kind of ran with other theories, myself included, thinking that it was something else entirely. But yeah, it turns out that was actually true. He was a duck hunter. Also, the burlap was not actually burlap. It was sort of like stuff that a hunter would use to cover themselves. So again, the duck hunting connection there, even though they did say at the time, there is something printed on the burlap, and that turned out to be camouflage as opposed to like a logo for a company or something like that. But 92 weapons, and the mirrors, the doll. He obviously has a predilection for young women who are small in stature. The women that, the GB4, the GB3 as of now, they think that the fourth, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, is going to be connected. I saw that before, but he clearly has a taste for young you know, small framed women. And I think a lot of people are reading into this doll as potentially that. It is in a glass case. We were talking about it on a thing the other night, a true crime sort of symposium, about whether or not this has anything to do with maybe there are allegations that we haven't even heard yet about him regarding children or something like that, but we just don't know for sure. And information is coming out more and more, it seems, every single day. It's pretty remarkable how much has come out since, you know, the other day, since I guess Thursday or Friday.
Right, and especially as I start looking into other states too, this could just keep getting deeper and deeper. There's also been talk about potential trophies that he may have kept. Is there anything new on this?
Not that I've seen, it wouldn't surprise me. However, you know, there are things that would make sense for him to hold on to. I personally would look at the cell phones as trophies. Why wouldn't one get rid of a burner phone or get rid of, you know, a victim's cell phone? That's a trophy to me. It's a very modern trophy. It's not like holding onto a piece of clothing or, you know, a lock of hair or something like you see in the movies. It's a very modern thing to hold on to, but it would not put it I would not be surprised at all if, you know, there is more in there. And also, they raided his, storage locker. Now, there was a medical examiner at that storage locker, which was in Amityville, Long Island, so not super far from his home in Massapequa, within 10 minutes, about an 8-minute drive. It's never a good thing when there's a medical examiner called to a storage facility. So, again, not a whole lot has been released on that yet, but that did happen.
Right, and he's been charged now in three of the murders, linked to potentially a fourth. But what about the other remains that were found? If police aren't linking them to Heuermann yet, do you think they might have some other leads they're looking into?
I saw an interview with the sheriff, the you know, sheriff of Suffolk County, and he was very confident that all of them are connected to Rex Heuermann, which obviously is hopefully a relief in some ways, that this indicates that there is not either another party responsible for those other unfortunate victims. He seemed remarkably confident, and I can only be, you know, I can only put my faith in, you know, the sheriff. I think we all kind of can at this point. If he believes that all of those victims belong to Rex Heuermann or are the result of Rex Heuermann, that's, you know, good enough for me. I hope that turns out to be the case.
Yeah, and let's broaden the conversation now to some of those other areas that police are now looking into, specifically Las Vegas and South Carolina, to see if Heuermann has any involvement potentially in cold cases there. Are you aware of any travels or business trips that he took, or what links are police really narrowing into here?
I know that he took a trip at one point with his wife abroad, at a point where the cell phones that he was using to make phone calls to some of the victims' family members went dark. But that's really the only one that I've been, you know, looking at. I'm sure there have been other times where he's gone, you know, to Vegas or to South Carolina. I believe the thinking with the South Carolina property is that he would retire there, that he and his brother would build something on these parcels of property, that he would retire down there. He's not quite retirement age, so that might have been a few years off. But nevertheless, like the amount of material, and there's some footage floating around online of the amount of stuff on those pieces of property is pretty interesting. And it's, you know, there's vehicles, there's just other sort of debris. There's a lot to look at, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's something that they would connect down there. Same thing with Vegas. I mean, Vegas has a lot of unsolved issues that could possibly be tied to him. That would not surprise me either. That was a timeshare situation in Vegas, and it was apparently it's the house or whatever it is right on the strip. So I imagine that that is something that he frequented, at least, you know, during his timeshare of the year or whatever it was. But the impression that I got is that he hadn't been there in a while, or at least within, you know, a couple years.
Yeah, now some experts have described Heuermann's arrest as the tip of the iceberg. What do you think they're referring to? What are your sources telling you?
The things that I've heard about are some unsolved murders in New Jersey. There are some sort of right outside Atlantic City that could be tied to him. They're very similar in terms of MO. But also, there's a lot of other things that those could be, the Manorville. There's some things here on Long Island in Manorville that could also be tied to him. If this is as big as a lot of people are saying it could be, we're going to see a lot of cold cases start to get solved, especially now that his DNA is actually in the system, which is huge at this point. I was heard that they were talking about this sort of like Friday and Saturday, that finally his material is now in the system, and other agencies are now getting in touch with the task force here on Long Island to sort of sort things out and be like, hey, we've got something that might match that. So hopefully, again, it's just going to be really good police work that sets this whole thing to rest.
Yeah, now neighbors in South Carolina said they don't know much about him. What about his Massapequa Park neighbors? What have they said, or have we heard from any other family members or those who knew him on all that's been happening?
Yeah, a lot of the neighbors have been saying like, "Oh, this kind of thing can't happen here. This sort of thing doesn't happen here." And if you know true crime, these things happen in places like Massapequa all the time. It's always the quiet ones, they always say, right? And they're sort of reacting as like, "Oh, that's always that house didn't fit in. It didn't do this." Well, now it sort of makes sense why that house didn't fit in, right? He had multiple other properties that he was attending to, so if one of them is going to fall into disrepair and he's only going to use it to potentially hide trophies, potentially hide other things in, it's not going to get repaired. I mean, the houses in Massapequa are lovely, people are wonderful, but they're still in shock, I think. And I think there's a breath that, when I was there was seemingly a breath of, relief that they were feeling that somebody like this, A, that the Long Island serial killer, the Gilgo Beach killer, was finally caught, and B, somebody was taken out of their community that was clearly a bad actor.
And I think anytime there's a serial killer suspect or case like this that has just grabbed the attention of so many cold cases that people want to see solved, there's always questions about, did people know? Were there any signs? How could people close to him, his family, not have any clue? What are your thoughts on what people may have known or suspected, or what have you read just about those who had any sort of interaction with him previously and their reaction to this?
Everybody kind of keeps coming out and saying like, "Oh, he was a little creepy. He was a little creepy." Well, if everybody who was a little creepy was, put behind bars or accused of being a serial killer, we'd have a lot of people being accused of being a serial killer, right? So the problem is these types of individuals are really good at covering themselves and masking amongst us. The Zodiac killer was never caught. They were very good at, walking amongst us kind of thing. Ted Bundy walked amongst us. Son of Sam, same kind of thing. So a guy like this, he's able to function in society remarkably well. He's traveling a lot for work. He's on the train every day. He's surrounded by people. He has a pretty public job, public enough that he was interviewed by French media. And he's got all these different properties. You wouldn't think that this is the kind of guy it is, but time and time again, we see that this is the kind of person it is. I think what could be, and I was thinking about this earlier today, what could be interesting is we look at more people like him, sort of the relatively unassuming, sort of quiet individuals, as opposed to waiting for these things to come to light yet again. Maybe these are the people that we should be looking harder at. And there's a lot of them out there. And I just hope that this is one that's off the board.
Yeah, absolutely. So looking ahead to the future, what do you expect to learn moving forward, or when do you think that we're going to get more information about what comes next here?
I don't think we're going to find out 100% what they found in his house, probably for a long while. We probably won't find out what they found in his house until either the trial starts or after the trial, which could be a long time. He is also saw this earlier. He is on suicide watch in prison because it is a high profile case, and because of everything involving his family and all of that stuff. And there's a lot of media attention. Apparently, that's protocol here in Suffolk County. Automatically put on suicide watch. Whether or not he's going to do anything or not, nobody knows. But I do think that we're not going to find out what's in that house 100% until after the trial. I mean, the only reason we know about that doll is because the Post got a picture of it. So like that's
Right.
the only real and of course people who were there saw it with their eyes, right? People only know about a large freezer taken out of his house because they saw it with their eyes and they saw it being carted away. What's in that freezer? We don't know yet, right? So we're not going to find that stuff out until the trial, until evidence is presented, and until this is kind of open and shut. I don't think we'll find out anything about the South Carolina properties unless, other than the car that they supposedly found there, unless they can tie more things back to Gilgo up here.
Right. Robert, I think the last question I'll leave you with here, because there are so many unknowns, because you've been following this so closely, if you could pick one thing to know right now, what do you want to know the most? What do you want the most answers to in this very moment?
I think the number one thing that I would want to know is whether or not anybody else is involved, whether or not he has friends that were with him at any point. And that would go back to your question about, well, didn't anybody know? Wouldn't have anybody known? His friends would have known if they were involved. That's the number one thing I would want to know, because then that would put the whole concept of, because a lot of people here on Long Island are still saying like, oh no, it's this or the multiple people and blah 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 blah. If he comes out straight out and says, no, it was just me, then that'll put everything to rest, I think, because he has nothing to gain, or by lying at this point. He has everything to gain by telling the truth and being totally upfront about how many victims, where, when, how he did it, why he did it, all of that stuff, just to be super cooperative.
Sure. Yeah, certainly a lot that is still unknown, a lot that people want answers to. But at the end of the day, we are one step closer to getting justice for the victims whose families have been left in the dark for so many years now. So, Robert, thank you so much for joining us here on Live Now from Fox to break everything down. We have a lot to talk about moving forward, so I'm sure we'll be in touch with you again soon. Thanks.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you again for that conversation. Of course, we're learning the latest information that the wife of the Gilgo Beach murder suspect there, Rex Heuermann, they have filed for divorce. The wife of him as going potentially uncontested. We're learning this here on Live Now from Fox.